I don't know if it's very readable or no, maybe no. It's a little bit, no. Yes, we have a perversion, moral prohibition, and the type of a pleasure. For example, in sadism, no, the law, the command is "thou shalt not punish the innocent." The type of a pleasure is, of course, punish the innocent. In masochism, may the guilty be punished. No, in perversion, it's a punish even if innocent. Exhibitionism, thou shalt not show thy genitals to strangers, I display them, and etc., etc. If it's readable, maybe you can follow. No, it's the same pattern. From this outline, it might seem that the perversions are simple transgression of a norm of a sexual morality, but things are not so simple. Also because the moral norms often change over the course of history, of course. Now, the analyst is summoned where there is something ego-dystonic to treat. That is, an analyst is called upon to find a remedy for something we do not like. Neuroses are ego-dystonic. Perversions instead are for the most part egosyntonic. They are a means to pleasure which the subject would not want to renounce for anything in the world. Certainly, these means to pleasure or to enjoyment are uncomfortable and dangerous, above all when they involve punishable offenses. The perverse individual complains not about the impossibility of enjoyment, but about an enjoyment which others dislike. But as we saw in the case of the masochist, perverse individuals in analysis also have an ego-dystonic side, otherwise it would be impossible to analyze them. In short, they do not just derive pleasure thanks to their perversions. In other ways, they suffer for them. Thus, perversion is not so much ego-dystonic as it is heterodystonic. That is, it is in dystonia with what the other wishes, even in its less aggressive forms, for example, in masochism and fetishism. Even these non-criminal forms of perversion are in contradiction with the other insofar as masochism and fetishism necessitate a woman accomplice. A woman might even be willing to humiliate, walk on, or beat a masochist, but she will certainly not be doing it for her own pleasure, but to give pleasure to her masochist, I would say. Any neurotic who goes to an analyst will say, says, I would like to enjoy, but I can't. It's the basis of the psychoanalysis. Instead, the two perverse individual complains to the analyst, I enjoy, but the other does not enjoy my way of enjoying. As to the psychotic, he can suffer enormously, but also enjoy. What induces us to cure psychotics is the discretion in the subject ways of being with respect to social tolerability. The psychotic needs to be cured because he makes others suffer. That is, he threatens the social routine. Psychosis is, in short, social dystonic. It's this kind of a triple. In neurosis, ego-dystonia, perversion, heterodystonia, psychosis, social dystonia, according to my view. I don't know if you agree, but anyway. The true essence of perversion is thus enucleated in an ethical discordance, in wanting to use the other as subject in order to get pleasure. Not as object, as subject. Perversion is a way to make use of the other as a subject, not as an object. This is why I prefer the term perversion rather than paraphilia, because of its ethical connotation. To view perversion as a heterodystonic relation implies, in effect, a relation to the law which falls outside of traditional ways of judgment typical to certain Christian churches, which derive their concept essentially from Aristotle. For these churches, perverse sexuality is condemned for the very same reasons that homosexuality was, for going against nature, parafusing. Normal sexuality, instead, would be according to nature, catafusing, and would lead spontaneously to the insemination of the woman and thus to conception. The criterion of opposition between unnatural against nature and natural according to nature acts still dominates Catholic morality, for example, maybe also of other churches, which is Aristotelian by way of Thomism. Any technology which prevents conception, for example, contraceptives, is morally condemned. Even perversions appear to Catholic morality in some way as a technical derailing of spontaneous sexuality, as artifices or artifice, I don't know, and distortions which impede conception. It's the Catholic Aristotelian way of thinking about perversions and homosexuality and everything this. Yet we live in a post-Aristotelian era where the opposition between counter-nature and according to nature is ever more obsolete, because for today's prevalent scientific philosophy, everything that exists is natural. It's our culture, it's our... Nothing can be counter-nature because nothing falls outside of nature. Perversion specificity that does not consist in their going against nature, but in their going against morality, precisely to use the other as a subject for one's own pleasure. The splitting of the ego, on which psychoanalysis constructed its theory of perversions, must thus today be reinterpreted as an ethical split. On one side, the perverse individual needs the subjectivity of the other, but on the other, the subjectivity on the other, of the other, serves only to allow him alone to enjoy. The sadist needs the other's sufferance, the masochist the other's anger and severity, the voyeur and the exhibitionist the other's sexual pleasure, whether real or presumed, the pedophile the infant other's eroticism, the fetishist the other's narcissism, the transvestite the other's believing that he's a man. No, he's a woman, sorry, but it isn't. Be it a specific, concrete other or virtual other with a big old O, no, un grand autre in French terms, every perversion in any case appeals to a subjectivity, whether supposed or manifest, of the other. But nothing is conceded in this subjectivity of the other with a big O. What matters is that this perverse dependence on the other, big O, leads to a solitary enjoyment which stands out against the background of the other's pain or indifference. I think it's now our modern, present conception of a perversion, if we are not aware of this paradigm, but it's our way of thinking to things, no, in psychiatry and in everyday life. From its start, psychoanalysis addressed perversion, yet not so much in moral terms as in terms of a splitting of the ego, Ich-Spaltung. In the history of psychoanalysis, perversions assumed an enormous theoretical importance precisely because Freud, reflecting on fetishism, elaborated the concept of the splitting of the ego, a consequence of the Disavowal, Verleugnung, of reality. The fetishism would in effect be the disavowal of the lack of a penis in the woman. The fetishist grasps that women lack a penis, but in some way denies this evidence. Intellectually, he knows that women lack a penis, but on another level of archaic knowledge, we would say, he continues to think they do. The well-known fetish, for the most part, feet and shoes, would be nothing other than a substitute penis whose presence renders the woman particularly desirable for him. This coexistence between two knowledges lies the splitting of the ego. Even if Freud did not state it explicitly, this mechanism of splitting is not limited to the perverse. On a certain level, we are all split. No? To the degree that we are all split, there is something perverse in all of us, just as we all have repressions, even without a big neurotic, because on a certain level we all disavow our shared knowledge. We can give examples that all our life in a certain way is based on the Verleugnung, just like in Verdrängung. In which way does the psychoanalysis extend the mechanism of disavowal to all perversions? The process of a disavowal is clear in fetishism, but what about in other perversions? It's a never answer to this implicit or explicit question. According to this theory, every perversion implies a sort of a dual knowledge, so to speak. On the one hand, the perverse individual has a clear sense of reality. On the other hand, the perverse act implies a different knowledge which does not coincide with the common one, which almost seems to deny or negate it, as we saw with the fetishist. The sadist takes pleasure because, on the one hand, what? Some others are strange. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I didn't. The sadist take pleasure because, on the one hand, he knows very well, like everyone else, that his victim is not to blame. But on the other hand, he behaves as if the victim were to blame and deserved the worst punishment. If somebody saw this American movie 7 of 10 years ago, it's quite clear that the sadist is a fundamentalist moralist. No? He has to punish somebody. As for the masochist, he knows full well that the other whom he has put in the role of punisher is only his accomplice, but he, in short, is staging a scene, and yet being the erotic subject, it is as if he believed himself to have really done something seriously wrong for which the other severely punishes him. In sadism and masochism, the roles of guilt and innocence are situated on opposite sides of the split. On the level of actual knowledge, the innocence of the other or oneself is acknowledged, while on the level of what knowledge is useful for the purpose of a pleasure, the guilt of the other or oneself is affirmed. As to the voyeur, on one hand, he knows that he is excluded from the sexual scene he observes. The simple fact of having to hide himself excludes him from the scene. And yet, on the other hand, his pleasure derives precisely from his feeling included even through exclusion, as if he were part of that sexual act which excludes him.